Good morning and welcome to the Raben Report. I'm your host, Elliot Raben, so get ready to get triggered. Hello and welcome to the Raben Report. I'm your host, Elliot Raben, and with me is my expert panel, Amara and Samuel. How are you guys?
Great.
Awesome. And on top of that, we've also got special guest Zehavi Zynoberg, a conservative strategist who has worked in both provincial and municipal levels, joining our panel. Thank you for being here, Zehavi.
Thanks for having me.
So to begin, all opinions expressed are not those of Ryerson or Ryerson faculty and are only those of the individual commentators. Viewer discretion is advised. Before we get to the news, the Raben Report would like to announce that Jordan Pines is no longer a part of the show, as he has decided to pursue other interests. As such, we will be having different guests each week joining our panel. No matter what happens, you can expect a great show for you, as always. Coming up a little later in the program, we'll be talking about our main topic, the Democrats Part 2. But first, let's take a look at our top stories in our weekly update, starting with the Taliban and the United States signing a peace agreement, which is pretty historic. And what's everybody's thoughts on that? They've been at war for so long, and now there's peace all of a sudden?
I think we should wait and see what happens.
I think it's great. Trump ran on an anti-war promise, largely in the Middle East, and I think that the time they've spent in the U.S. is way too long, and the deal from the preliminary information I've received that's available online, it seems like a good deal. It's interesting. I see a lot of left-wing people who were always anti-war, and then they're criticizing Trump because, he's appeasing the Taliban. Well, if you held an anti-war position, how else do you think they would have exited the country? It just seems like they're just trying to criticize him for the sake of criticizing him.
Well, this is actually something I would have expected Democrats to have further champion, because I know the preliminary aspect of it all really started under the Obama administration, but someone like Tulsi Gabbard, who's still running in the presidential Democratic primary, she's very anti-war. It's a big plank of her campaign. This is really just something that I would have expected her to have advocated for, and I think I never would have expected this to be something that the Trump administration would have ever entertained. So,
yeah. I think that's just the partisan nature of politics, especially American politics. I think marrying yourself to a political party so much so that you have to criticize good things because the other side did it is just ridiculous. Yeah.
And it's fair, but it's just from an ideological perspective.
Well, that's why that's why the people Samuel was talking about aren't happy, because Trump's Trump and he's a Republican.
To be fair, I could see Ted Cruz type Republicans criticize. If it had been a Democratic president, if they had made the same deal, I could imagine them criticizing their Democratic president, because they'd be like, they're making a weak deal. We should kill the. I can see it. We should kill the Taliban, not agree with them. You know?
It's both sides.
Yeah,
partisanship is not great, and I think either way, acting like something that's good is bad because the other guy did it, I think is just ridiculous. Politics is about representing the people and doing what's best for them, not winning.
Mm-hmm. But regardless, I think it's good that they've left.
Yeah. Well, let's move on then to the migrant crisis in Greece. Turkey has pretty much been sending migrants to Greece, and Greece has been trying to defend its borders. It's really a crisis. What's everybody's thoughts on that? Is Greece doing the right thing? Why is Turkey doing this?
So I just want to clear up. Are they Turkish refugees, or are they refugees that Turkey has accepted from other countries?
Refugees that go through Turkey or have been held by Turkey in the past, and then now are...
So is it fair to say that they're being sent, or that
because Erdogan has made public statements that he wants to flood Europe with refugees. There's millions over the course of, I think, a couple of years. Well, but it seems like it's a very driven. Like they wouldn't have exited Turkey. Like they have to go through the whole country, right? Like it was a political decision.
I mean, Greece is perfectly free to not accept refugees. And I don't think storming borders is necessarily the right way to go about anything. So, in terms of the whole entire refugee crisis, I do think that countries should accept refugees. But it's up to them to decide how many and when and how. And I don't think you can just like walk in. So
I think it follows a pattern from other European countries that are, for the lack of a better way of putting it, gone further right. And I think it just it kind of mirrors, if I may, Donald Trump's travel ban, and also to add to that, it also his the build the wall. So I think it's just mirroring that, and it's gotten to a place where it's just spiraled out of control, and now they're really struggling to how they're going to deal with it.
Yeah, I think globally the whole project of internationalism for the last, you could say maybe 50, 60 years, implemented largely after World War II. I think the negative effects of that project is being understood by the global community. And no matter where, if it's in South America, Eastern Europe, North America, I think there's a growing tide. You can say populism or just restrictionist in trade, immigration. I think that's going to be a rising trend.
It's just quite interesting to see that the migrant crisis is back in the news, because Canada was accepting refugees about a couple of years ago. They were accepting pretty much the most refugees than any other country.
I'm highest per capita.
Highest per capita, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you see? How do you see this situation being resolved?
Sorry, I highest per capita, that stat is for immigration. I don't know if that's necessarily for refugees, but maybe Amara knows.
I think there are other European countries
too
that have taken a lot of refugees. I know Germany's taken quite a bit of refugees.
Sounds correct.
I think also we're just kind of lucky in North America, just geographically where we exist. And even luckier than the States, I guess, because they have migrants that come through South America and Mexico. I mean, I know there are refugees that walk through like Vermont, but something like storming the border is probably not going to happen in Canada, because I doubt they're going to walk through the Arctic. So I feel like
people have done it before.
We're kind of lucky to just be where we are. Canada has a lot more control over the refugees they choose to accept, because it's not likely that people are just going to like come.
Well, they were having people jump the queue. That was a big problem.
That's what I was going to say.
In the last year or so.
Like I mentioned, the people walking through Vermont, there are problems, but I don't think something like this is going to happen in Canada anytime soon.
Why do you think Turkey's doing this? Why do you think Turkey wants to have refugees take over Europe?
I don't
Turkey,
think that's what they want.
No, the way I didn't read. I don't know Turkish, so I can only rely on like a headline translation. But he seems like Turkey wants to, especially Erdogan, wants to assert itself in the region, which is why they're invading, I guess you could say, northern Syria. And then I think I'd have to do a little bit more research into what he said, but I think this using like weaponized refugee, like human waves into Eastern and Southeastern Europe, I think that's just a leverage tool. He's like opening the valve, saying, this is what I can do Europe. Obviously, it's a financial burden on them. And maybe it's leverage to get some kind of concession that he wants. I really don't know. It's strange.
Yeah. Well, we're just going to have to see what happens. And in terms of seeing what happens, we're back on a very local issue, which is the Ryerson Student Union. Amara, you're very passionate about that subject. Currently, Ryerson today, actually, is voting on a new system to run Ryerson Students Union, because Ryerson, as mentioned previously on the show, terminated its agreement since 1986 with the Ryerson Student Union, and there has been a lot of drama taking place and a lot of... Amara.
I think it's... So, I mean, I'm not clear on all of the drama. I don't follow the Facebook groups that closely, but I think... So right now there's the election going on for the new structure of the government, and there's like beef between those groups. And then I believe that there was like a fake account made in order to target somebody, and it was based on a personal vendetta, not necessarily like student politics. I just think it's hilarious and very indicative of the nature of student politics that there's all of this drama going on before the election to figure out how our new student government is even going to look. I just think it's ridiculous. And like always, things to do with the RSU or any sort of Ryerson Students Union are exhausting and pretty exclusive to a small group of people.
Zehavi, as you don't go to Ryerson, what have you heard about Ryerson from an outsider's perspective?
So I went to York, and dare I say I have not much to really carry with myself in terms of pride of my alumni, but I got a good education there, but from the student activity and the student union activity and all the student groups that were involved there. Obviously, as you probably know, there's a debate or a dispute of some sort always really going on there. But from what I actually know about the Ryerson situation is that the reason why Ryerson, like the university, took away or revoked their funding from the student union was because they were, using the money that they were given on things like alcohol
Yep.
and food, like things that were not like what they were.
Something like $750,000.
Yeah, mismanaged.
So, but then the whole purpose of a student union, from what I know, is that they want to provide services for students that like mental health, funding for different causes and what have you. But then what you always see is that these unions go down a road where it always goes into some political activity that usually manifests itself on the left. And in the grand scheme of things, the university has these services that the student union would provide anyway. Like there is a mental health service provided by the university. So these fees that the university would have normally given the student union is it's like the Doug Ford when the Student Choice Initiative. Where's the money going?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily like politically like an ideological problem. I think it's just the lack of oversight. The Ryerson Students Union does have some good services. Like I believe they do stuff like they can give food to students who don't need it. I know
the
that
Good
you
Food
can get
Center. They have the sexual assault.
you can get
center.
supporter.
But doesn't the university have those services anyway?
No, not all of them. But you can also get free like period products and condoms and stuff like that. And I do think it's important that we're advocated for, especially in negotiations and just conversation in relation to the university. But I think that the issue comes from the lack of oversight. And we're adults, but young adults, very young adults with not a lot of experience, a lot of money. Like the execs are salaried, and then they have access to these credit cards that have so much money. And it's usually like, I think the turnout is like 2% usually here.
Low.
So not a lot of people know what's going on. Not a lot of people are involved.
A lot of people think these elections are. York, I can certainly say that they're rigged.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of money that's being handled. So I think it's just a lack of oversight and just people who, I guess, just get too big for their britches and get an ego because 2% of the student population voted for them.
It's probably just like their entire extended friend group. And
Yeah,
then the friend
exactly.
groups
It's usually, and then they do things like with the whole Ram Ganesh situation, like retreats. There's those videos from them having parties with alcohol or going on retreats. If it's your extended friend group and those are the only people who vote or are involved, it's just not democratic.
And one
at
thing
all.
you mentioned the last time we spoke about the RSU, which I think is very true, unless you benefit somehow from the RSU, you're not supporting them.
Yeah, I haven't met anyone like in any of my classes that speaks positively about the RSU. One person, and they worked for the RSU. So, yeah, it's pretty telling when somebody's advocating pretty hard for the RSU that they benefit some way.
Well, I never benefited from the York Federation of Students because, like I said, they tend to align themselves with very left-wing political issues.
I just think that the Ryerson, I guess Canada 150 could be considered left-wing political.
But
I don't even know if that would be left-wing. BDS,
was
yes,
a big
but
problem.
I don't even think that the Canada 150 is a left-wing issue. I think that's just
Yeah,
such a
because
small minority
It wasn't
of
even
people.
all of the execs that
Right.
agreed. So I think for me at least, the problems that I have with the student union aren't necessarily political ideology. I think if the Ryerson Student Union could get its shit together, maybe we could see that is an issue. But I feel like right now it's just the fact that they're not doing anything for the students and seem to be in it so that they can take Ubers and drink and go to clubs and go to debt consolidation firms and not do a financial audit because it's too expensive, and then sue the school with our
the
money
same money
for using our money. So yeah.
Well, now let's fly over to the other side of Canada on the west. We're going to talk about the pipeline, the Coastal GasLink pipeline protests. Checking in on that situation, there was an agreement that was reached, some sort of an agreement that was reached, but the blockades are still not down. Why is that?
So, from my understanding, the agreement was made exclusively with the hereditary chiefs, and then I've seen
The hereditary or elected?
hereditary.
Oh, okay.
And then I've seen things on Twitter and other news sites were saying that the elected chiefs kind of felt left out, or I guess the proper would be disenfranchised from the whole process, especially because the elected chiefs, I believe, there are more of them than the hereditary chiefs.
But it's political.
Right, exactly.
The existence of those two bodies. So.
There not a lot of the details of the deal have been made public, but what I imagine happened was just some kind of money under the table, or not literally like dirty money, but they probably provided them funding either directly or indirectly, gave some concessions. The government did. I doubt the hereditary chiefs made any concessions, and if some kind of solution was made, I doubt it was the type of structural solution that we had discussed in prior episodes that I think we all agreed was absolutely necessary. So this is just it's gonna pop up again.
Mm-hmm.
Another 2 or 3 years, maybe even less.
That sort of structural solution takes a lot longer, and it's going to take so much work. And that's what I think. So I think the issue with the Wet'suwet'en and people in BC, and then the issue with the fact that there's like solidarity blockades still going on in other parts of the country, are two different things. Because I know that there's a lot of like anti-pipeline, just in general people, and I think honestly just like bored people who want to protest, doing the solidarity protests.
Unemployed baristas.
That don't speak for the Wet'suwet'en.
Exactly.
Yes, but I think that there's also something to be said for the way in which the Canadian government negotiates and deals with the Indigenous community. And like I mentioned, the elected chiefs aren't something that they necessarily did. It was something that was put in place by the Indian Act, by the Canadian government. So I just think it needs to be figured out, because obviously there's issues with, I don't think throwing money at the problem of the problems that the Indigenous communities face is necessarily good. It hasn't worked, but I also understand that they want sovereignty, so they don't necessarily want the Canadian government going in and governing them. So I think there needs to be like I said, maybe another royal commission, just something to figure it out, because like Samuel said, it's just kicking the problem down the road. Something else is going to happen somewhere else with another tribe, and it's just going to be the exact same thing.
Look how bad it's like taking a toll on Trudeau's electoral prospects. Like, there was a poll that came out yesterday that said if an election was held today, that the Conservatives essentially would garner the same support that they got in October. So that was like 34%. The Liberals, who got about 33, like it was like, in terms of the popular vote, it was like down 1 from the Conservatives. They're down from like, or the 33% to 26%. And a lot of their support actually went down, came from the NDP. The NDP shot up from like, 15% to 25%. So obviously it's a snapshot in time, but Trudeau's personal approval numbers have also, like, he kind of retreated any negative opinion about him from blackface and just his record as prime minister. When the Iran, the plane crash happened, and he dealt with that pretty well, I have to say, even as a conservative. But this basically took any gains that he made in terms of his approval and just shot his disapprovals like right up.
Yeah, I think regardless of your like position on the blockade issue, I think people were just fed up and annoyed with Trudeau not doing anything. It didn't seem like he was doing anything. So I think people were annoyed with that. And yeah, blackface, that's a thing too.
Well, in terms of a cross-country situation, let's finally check in on the coronavirus. It's back in the news. We have about over 30 cases now in Ontario, and it's clearly a bigger issue. It's spread all over Italy. It's in, I believe, over 30 countries as well. What are we doing? Do you think Trudeau's response to the way it's being handled in Canada is appropriate, seeing as other countries are restricting travel entirely, or at least to the affected areas?
I think that we're we should acknowledge that Canada is a developed, industrialized nation that has, a pretty good healthcare system that I think is pretty well equipped to deal with something like this. We're not necessarily just like Italy. I also think that, again, like I said, the first time we talked about it, of course, the numbers are way up from what they were then, but the majority of the cases still don't require hospitalization. The majority of people recover. It's really if you're old or have an otherwise weak immune system that you really need to be worried. Obviously, I don't want to catch it. I don't think anybody wants to, but I think we should just still, keep that in mind that it's not the plague. But I don't think right now that he's necessarily doing anything super wrong. I think
his health minister, I think a week ago, said that people should start stockpiling, as if there was going to be
I think that's an overreaction. Yeah, it makes it seem like it is the plague. When you read that the government's telling you to stockpile essentials, that's terrifying. And then we've all seen pictures, I'm sure, of grocery stores. There's no hand sanitizer in the country.
People are treating a little ounce of hand sanitizer,
gold.
The price has surged. It's $45 on Walmart.
I saw N95 masks on eBay and stuff like that. I think people just want chaos and want to be excited and want to be a part of something crazy going on.
Modernity is boring. And
exactly. We don't get a plague we don't get the Spanish influenza or anything fun like that, right?
When you do a lot of reading for World War One, it'll make sense. A lot of the justifications and the reason why people so happily accepted their leaders' reasons for going into war was that people were bored. Nothing had happened in Europe in the last 40 years, and they just wanted some excitement. I think that's the human condition. There's something happening. Oh my god!
By design, the peace in Europe, nationalism.
Prior to World War One?
Yeah, nationalism was on the rise and stuff like that. Yeah, I think people do get bored and want to be part of something exciting. Like my mom said, she was at Costco recently, and people were there was somebody offering to sanitize her cart, but they were holding sanitary wipes without gloves. So that's not it's not very sanitary to walk around sanitizing everyone's cart without wipes, and no one was throwing them out. They were just sitting around. People are also just I think people are being ridiculous and hysterical. A lot of normal people
Run for the hills.
You don't think that people are being ridiculous, Sam? You think it's serious?
Yeah, you should stockpile.
Yeah.
You should always have a stockpile, though.
I don't think most people don't.
Most people don't,
you should have something.
You should be prepared for something to happen.
How much food do you have?
Not a lot.
How long could it last you? How long could you last if the water went off?
Not long at all.
Yeah.
But I think that those should be things that you always plan for. We have blackouts in the city in the summer a lot of the time. You should prepare for things like that. And again, what are you going to do? If you think it's the plague, what do you suggest that people do? Okay. Well, we're all not home, so.
Can I give a little anecdote? Do we have time for that?
Very quickly.
Okay, my uncle lives on a military base, or near a military base in Alabama. We were joking, what would happen if, it's apocalypse? What if a missile hit, the base, which is what would happen in a war? He says, I wouldn't try to survive. I would go on the front lawn and just wait for the bombs to drop. He just doesn't. I think some people are like that. They're like, okay, the world's ending. I just want to die.
Like when the Hawaii, do you remember that the mistake? Yeah. And a lot of people are just kind of okay, you can't do anything about it. Yeah. So
feels like just giving up, though.
What do you suggest
wash
that
your
we
damn
do?
hands,
exactly.
people.
That you should have been doing
cough into your sleeve.
Wash your hands. When you get home,
get on with your damn
When you get home from being outside, don't go eat or touch your baby or your grandma without washing your hands. Come on. Okay. I agree. It's basic hygiene that will protect us.
That's probably the best way.
Well, I guess that's. I mean, it never hurts to be a little more careful. Is the
You're
point.
Not at home.
No, but just to wash your hands more. It never hurts to be more careful.
No,
but let's now move on to our main story, which is the Democrats Part 2. In Season 6, we had an episode called The Democrats with our old panel Marshall, Daniel, Tamar, and special guest Jake, who you'll remember from our election special episode. Back then, we discussed how the Democrats regained control of the House, newcomers to the party, and prospective nominees for the ticket in 2020. Today, following Super Tuesday, we're back with Part 2 of this political party to see how much has changed. According to the Washington Post, Super Tuesday is the United States presidential primary election day in February or March when the greatest number of U.S. states hold primary elections and caucuses. Approximately 1/3 of all delegates to the presidential nominating conventions can be won on Super Tuesday, more than any other day, rather. The first state to cast their ballot was Iowa on February 3rd, and the final will be the Virgin Islands on June 6th. Until one candidate gets 1,991 delegates, the number needed for the nomination, the votes will continue to matter. Whoever ends up winning the nomination will then go on to the final stage of the 2020 election, facing President Donald Trump. On today's show, we discuss the importance of Super Tuesday, the remaining nominees' platforms, and once again, if the Democrats can beat Trump in 2020. As a reminder, we are live on Facebook, so make sure to comment on our feed to have your thoughts read live on air. Let's start with how important Super Tuesday is in determining the nominee. We also want to mention breaking news that Elizabeth Warren has dropped out of the race today. Right before the show, she dropped out. We're going to talk more about that in a little bit, but how important is Super Tuesday in determining the nominee? Zahavi.
Historically, the candidate who has won the most states on Super Tuesday, going back in the last number of cycles, so 2016, Hillary Clinton, 2012, Mitt Romney, 2008, Barack Obama, has gone on to win the nomination. So given that Joe Biden not only had a really great Super Tuesday, if history is an indicator, Joe Biden will be the Democratic presidential nominee.
Interesting. Amara?
I mean, this is the first U.S. election I followed this closely, so I can't disagree. I haven't researched, and I'm going to believe you. I can't disagree with facts if that's true.
Facts are facts.
Yeah, but I think Bernie's campaign is largely based on people being tired of the status quo and norms and what's historically happened. So maybe, just maybe, this time that won't be the case, hopefully. But if that's historically been the case, then I can't argue with that.
And Samuel?
Yeah, I think I was reading online quickly. It's roughly around 34% of the total amount of delegates. And like Zehavi said, yeah, I think the historical precedent is that if you win Super Tuesday, you win everything.
Mm-hmm. Now let's talk about who everybody here was supporting. Who are you or were you supporting in the Democratic race and why? Zehavi, let's start with you. I know exactly who you were supporting, but why don't you tell our audience?
Wasn't at first, but I was a big fan of Mayor Pete Buttigieg. I thought he brought a sense of pragmatism and level-headedness that, say, people like Bernie Sanders and even Elizabeth Warren, but I guess on the more moderate side, Joe Biden represents, he's an old white guy pushing 80. Pete Buttigieg was someone who really... He gave a lot of people Obama vibes in the sense that he was, I think he represented the next generation. He wasn't too far to one end of the political spectrum, obviously in the Democratic Party's case, the left. And I thought that for me, what really spoke to me was his whole candidacy was historic because of the fact that he was a gay male. The first openly gay person to ever win delegates and ever run for president. So he did not run on the basis of his sexuality, say that,
Right.
Hillary Clinton very much touched on the fact that she was a woman a lot. So historic candidacy, really. I liked him a lot.
Mm-hmm. Amara, I know you really didn't like Pete Buttigieg, and why is that?
I think that he was... I think he didn't mention the fact that he was gay a lot, but I think it was between the lines a lot. I think that was a lot of the reason that people supported him. I think people saw him the same way that, like you said, gave people Obama vibes. I think people saw him the way they saw Obama, as the first person from, a minority of any sort to be successful in candidacy.
Well, I think he got Obama vibes because of he was younger and
yeah, that's what I mean. He's different. Obama
Yeah.
was different because he's black. Pete Buttigieg was different because he's gay and because he's way younger than most of the other candidates.
If you actually see them talking side by side in edited videos, like they have the almost exact same candor to their voice and the way that they they structure their sentences and where they pause. Like it's very
Their candor.
it's very similar.
I personally am a Bernie bro. I supported and still support Bernie Sanders. I am also Canadian, and I don't have dual citizenship, so I will not be
There's such like
voting.
a Bernie like Bernie girl, Bernie sis.
I don't mind. I think bro can be gender neutral. I don't mind that. So I'm not going to be voting. I'm just going to be tweeting angrily to my Canadian friends.
What I want to ask though is you mentioned about like Pete Buttigieg being
Yeah, I was
popular
gonna
because he's gay.
mention that.
Do you think that's important? Do you think that's
No, I don't think that's important. That he's gay. The president isn't.
Not necessarily just that he's gay, but that somebody that is of a certain community runs for president. And do you think that should
I understand
go into account?
why it matters. As a black person, I understand why people were happy that Obama ran and that he won. I understand it. So I assume it would be the same for the gay community, and I understand that. But in terms of politics, I don't think it's important. And I think the fact that I think Pete Buttigieg's identity was revolutionary, and the fact that he was young and he was gay, but I think Bernie Sanders' politics are revolutionary, and I think that's why he gets a lot more support from younger people, because younger people want change. They don't just want somebody different that says and does the same things.
Is the reason you don't like Pete Buttigieg the same reason pretty much you didn't like Jagmeet Singh? Just because they play to their minority?
I think I dislike Buttigieg more than Singh.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, that's basically why. And anybody that I feel, takes votes from Bernie and isn't going to win, I think is a waste. So, yeah.
So you definitely didn't think Pete Buttigieg had a chance?
No.
Even I didn't think he had a path to nomination. I thought he outperformed in the earlier states like Iowa and New Hampshire, but throughout the whole process, I knew he was never going to be the nominee. It was more so just about the magnitude of his candidacy and how far and how well he did. And he, by endorsing Biden, he realized the only way to stop Bernie Sanders and his henchmen of Bernie bros and all that nonsense was to endorse the person who had the most support with the black community.
Yeah, I think Buttigieg realized that he better step in line with the Democratic establishment if he wants to have a future career in politics, and that's why he threw his support behind Joe Biden. I don't think it's because they're ideologically similar.
I think he'll be president someday.
Joe Biden
Really?
or Buttigieg?
Well, both.
Oh, well, hopefully not Biden, but I think Buttigieg, he's young, so maybe he has a lot of time. I don't think right now America would elect a gay president, but I think in the future, as old people die,
Do you
they
think
would.
you think America wouldn't elect a gay president because he's gay?
Yes,
Okay.
I do. I don't think that I think there's plenty of Americans that would not vote for someone on the sole basis that they are
But that's
gay.
the same argument people made against Hillary Clinton, that they wouldn't vote for her because she's a woman, and she still got more votes than Trump.
No, I'm not saying. I just don't think right now that that America's ready for that. I have no problem with a gay man being president. I just don't think that America would elect a gay man right now.
Well, in terms of non-electable or unelectable people right now, let's talk about the other dropouts of the campaigns. We talked about Pete Buttigieg. Let's talk about Amy Klobuchar and Tom Sayer, who I called Tom Sawyer. Sawyer? Yeah.
Steyer.
Steyer?
Oh,
You
that's
see,
my
like-
fault. I'm sorry.
Oh, there you go.
Last
So-
week, I think one of you said.
Yeah, I said
Tom
Stayer.
Sawyer. And you
He's
I said Tom Sawyer.
We don't know who he is.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Isn't Tom Sawyer? Isn't that like
That's a
From
character.
Huckle- yeah.
yeah,
the character.
Huckleberry Finn.
It's not a real life
Grade
person. No.
7 memories.
So let's talk about then. Obviously, he's not relevant. Let's talk about Amy Klobuchar, who actually, I would say did have a chance to be a good nominee.
I don't think she did. There's a lot of moderates as well, and I think they realized that they were splitting the moderate vote a lot. So conveniently, very conveniently, right before Super Tuesday, they all dropped out and endorsed Biden. So I think that Klobuchar and Pete and that's what they were doing. So
Also,
Steyer.
Beto O'Rourke.
sorry, and
Beta.
Tom.
He hasn't
Beto
endorsed
O'Rourke.
anyone, though, I don't
Be-
think.
Beto?
Is it-
Beto?
It's not Beto.
It's Beto O'Rourke.
We can't say anything.
Like,
on this
people
show.
say Kamala, it's Kamala.
Kamala Harris.
Like,
well, she's gone.
Kamala. Yeah.
So
Thank
Miss
you.
so,
that?
so
Thought
so
I put that out there.
so Miss Harris and Miss Klobuchar and Mr. Steyer.
Steyer.
God.
Oy vey. Okay.
Lord.
And
You know-
Pete, Mayor Pete. Don't forget Mayor
He
Pete.
is
Well, we
like
talked
the
about it.
hardest name to pronounce.
And
but
everyone
yeah, we
gets
all
it.
get
Buttigieg. It's fine.
Let's talk about why they actually no. Let's talk about Bloomberg.
Ugh.
Bloomberg. I know you really don't like him. Bloomberg put in $500 million into his campaign, and it went down the drain. was it worth it? Like he came second in, I believe, Oklahoma to Joe Biden, who spent $10,000 on ads in that state, and Bloomberg spent $10 million.
Didn't he
in that
win
state.
American Samoa? Was not his big win.
That wasn't even a state though. It's American
They
territory.
can't even vote in the actual election. So.
Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So I saw this online. Someone was discussing, like, isn't it stupid? Bloomberg wasted $500 million, and then the rationale behind that was, I imagine maybe that's his rationale. Under Bernie's tax policy, he would have lost more. It's a more progressive tax policy, obviously. He would have lost more under Bernie's tax policy than $500 million over the course of 4, maybe even 8 years.
Can you expand on that?
Well,
Like the tax policy. And all that.
the tax policy is more progressive. So Bloomberg is a higher income earner, so he would be taxed at a higher rate.
Yeah, I saw that he would have all that money that he would have invested would have had to be taxed away. Anyway.
Exactly. So the $500 million, you can think even if he won American Samoa, and only that, it's a wise investment. It's funny how a multi-million-dollar presidential run is a fucking investment, but it was.
So let's talk about the newest addition to the dropout team is Elizabeth Warren. Amara, you're very thrilled about that.
Well,
Potentially.
Yeah.
Potentially. Based on
Potentially.
who she supports. Now, she hasn't stated who she supports yet. But
She's about to make a statement.
Right now?
Yeah. Oh my god.
Oh my god.
We're all dying to find out what.
Has she endorsed? I saw 10 minutes ago that she hasn't made a decision.
I
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah,
we
she
know?
hasn't made a decision.
I'm gonna look it right
now. You are? Okay, cool. So while Samuel's checking up on that, did she have a chance?
No.
How far was she willing to go?
How far was she willing to go to undermine her own political ideals in order to not admit that she can't win the race? I don't know. I think this is how far she was willing to go. She should have dropped out before Super Tuesday. I don't understand why she would have waited.
Why do you think she dropped out? Do you think she
lost her
out?
own state?
Yeah,
third.
it's done. She lost.
To
She
me,
came
her
third.
going into Super Tuesday was a bit of a dice roll, but the only scenario that would have seen her have the actual rationale to continue was if she won her home state of Minnesota. That's
It's Michigan,
Amy Klobuchar.
right?
Massachusetts.
Oh my god! I'm so sorry.
Massachusetts. She not only lost, she came in third, and Joe Biden won Massachusetts. Where if it wasn't Elizabeth Warren who was going to win her state, I would have thought it would have been Bernie.
Yeah.
Same thing in Minnesota, where Amy Klobuchar, Joe Biden, he didn't even have staff in any of these states. Just think about that for a second. This guy was basically called dead in the water a week ago, and now he
It's funny how that works.
yeah, but it's not like the DNC controls the will of the voters. It's not like they say
No,
you don't
but
vote
they
for Joe
do
Biden.
make calls and tell people to drop out and endorse Biden right before Super Tuesday.
I guess their supporters just have incredible discipline.
Yeah.
I saw a funny meme, and it's a Bernie bro raging with the hat, and it's him saying, "Oh my god, don't you know Bernie wants healthcare for everyone and a progressive tax policy, yada yada." He's just ranting, and the other side, it's this guy with the Biden hat, and it's he no Obama.
Speaking of Bloomberg, I don't think Bloomberg ever, we already talked about Bloomberg. He didn't really have a chance, and he maybe made an investment. But I think Elizabeth Warren, I think she split the vote. I mean, I think it's clear who I hope she endorses, and I think she'll really be showing
I
her.
think she might actually support Biden.
Yeah, I think she'll really be showing her stripes if she goes against her own political ideals in order to stick
the
it to Bernie and his
the Bernie
supporters.
supporters have treated her like absolute garbage.
Yeah,
So
and
if I
fuck
was her, I'd
people
be
who
like,
have
"Screw
cancer
you."
and can't afford their treatment, I guess.
My question though to you is. Okay. My question to you is: do you think that that if she does support Biden, and I asked you this before the show, do you think that if she is supporting Biden, do you think it's because she believes he's the only one that can win, even though she might actually personally support Bernie's policies?
I think she might say that if she were to throw her support behind Biden. I don't think she believes that. I think she's salty, and I think her supporters are salty, and I think she would endorse Biden publicly to stick it to Bernie and his supporters.
But if Bernie's supporters were so rude to her, it seems
I don't think
like
they were. I think that's also a
hypothetically
dog
speaking,
whistle.
if
Yes.
Bernie supporters were so rude to her, isn't it the same situation as Hillary calling Trump supporters deplorable? Why would they support Hillary if they're called deplorable? And if Bernie did treat Warren supporters the same way, hypothetically again, Why would she?
So
why would
Bernie didn't treat anybody. It's his supporters.
Yeah,
Bernie
but he
Sanders
oversaw and he refused to do anything
he's
about
actually
it.
condemned them publicly. So I don't think he himself didn't say anything. So I think it's a little bit different than Hillary Clinton, who was the candidate, calling Trump supporters deplorable. I also think it's different because I don't think that Hillary had a good chance of taking a lot of Trump supporters. They're obviously in opposite parties. So we all were there for what happened. It really,
Do you remember where you were?
it really stirred.
I do.
It really stirred up Trump
Yeah.
supporters, right? The
That's
basket of deplorables thing. Wasn't there the deplorable after that? Like, they liked it. It really stirred them up. So I think that it's a little bit different because of all the things I mentioned. But for her supporters, why would Warren supporters support Bernie? He is the closest ideologically to Warren. So if he should be their second choice, if she's their first choice, if she drops out, the next closest to her should be their second choice.
But there
If
was
they're
a poll, if I may, there was a poll I saw, like, if Warren was going to drop out, like, over the last couple days,
what would have happened?
who they would go
Yeah.
to, it was surprisingly very close to even. And I think the reason behind that is maybe on the one hand, they think that Biden is basically going to be the nominee or he's the best chance of beating Trump. And on the other hand, the vitriol that Elizabeth Warren had to basically be on the receiving end of from Bernie Sanders supporters really turned them off. And
So I think that the cyberbullying that Warren and her supporters have faced from
it's not
Bernie
just
Bros.
that. They have like memes where like they have like the death person from like Family Guy like with blood on like the campaign signs of each of the dropped out candidates.
So I think it's largely overstated. I think people are really using that in order to justify not supporting Sanders because they like Warren. I know a lot of women are supporting Elizabeth Warren because she's a woman. I've heard people talk about her like a mom and stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of that there. But I think again, if you're going to
a beer,
if you're going to betray your political ideology because people were mean to you, then you shouldn't vote. Like, that's not what politics is about. And again, I guess we're just gonna say fuck you to people who have cancer and can't afford their treatment.
that's such a cop out.
It's not a cop out. People shouldn't die
Hold
because
on.
they can't
Let
afford
us
health
warn-
care.
Let us.
Question?
No. Okay.
What's going on?
So let's now talk about the two people that are still in the race: Biden versus Sanders.
And
let's-
Tulsi Gabbard, just for clarity.
Don't forget Tulsi.
Well,
She's
okay.
fit.
She's in the race, but we're not going to talk about her.
Good.
Let's
She's
talk
not
about. Hold on.
significant.
Let's talk about starting with Joe Biden. Can he consolidate the power of the moderate voters?
Yeah, he already has.
Yeah, he basically I think there's going to be history books written about the incredible like last 72 hours that Joe Biden has had. The amount
convenient.
of not only like how like in line the Buttigieg and Klobuchar and now I guess Bloomberg, but before Super Tuesday was the first two, how their supporters basically fell in line behind Joe Biden. Like, it's one thing to drop out, but it's also a gamble if your supporters are going to back who you want.
Yep.
So largely it's been reflected that they have, as Joe Biden won in states that Bernie Sanders was expected to win. And it seems like Joe Biden has basically consolidated the moderate vote. I was actually at so the Democrats abroad held their primary in Toronto on Super Tuesday. It took place at a pub not too far away from here, which is an interesting place to have a voting location. But
Yeah.
I was talking to a lot of dual citizens, and I was saying, okay, where are your thoughts on where are you at? And a lot of them were saying, it was an older crowd, and a lot of them were saying, just not Bernie. And yeah, that tends to reflect like how the older voters in the States are feeling. But even younger people here were like,
Samuel, you are a dual citizen.
Yes. Oh,
What's your position? Yeah. What's your position on that? Surprise,
About
Zehavi.
the dynamic between Bernie and
Old
Joe
people
Biden?
and young people and
Well, I
Bernie and
think
Biden.
There's definitely a large. I mean, you have to think of Democratic voter base like the Republican voter base. I saw even something specifically for the Democrats going into Super Tuesday. The youth demographic is very small compared to like the 55 to.
did you
I think,
vote in
70.
the prime? Well,
No, I'm not a registered Democrat, but there's definitely a large cohort of Americans, not just Democrats, that be like, well, I'm a Democrat, but I'm not a socialist. I don't know what that malarkey is, you know. And I think that cohort, like you said, the moderates would definitely, if they see Joe Biden as the only viable candidate, that's who they'd flock to.
And that's
Yeah.
what they were telling me. They're like, I wanted Kamala Harris, or I wanted Pete Buttigieg, who got a lot of, I'm not just tooting his horn. He had a lot of supporters at that pub. A lot of them were saying, yeah, we're going to strategically vote for Biden because I guess that's the only option now.
So there's two things that I wanted to mention. I think it's not surprising that older people would vote for Biden over Bernie. Biden is undoubtedly the establishment candidate in this race, and older people, I think, tend to toe the party line a little bit more and kind of agree with the establishment. And even in Canada, older people vote more than younger people. It's always a huge thing, at universities and stuff, trying to convince young people to go vote. And then the question, can he consolidate the power? I just wanted to mention that I'm pretty sure black people voted more for Biden than for Bernie Sanders.
Yep, he won.
Which I find ridiculous, personally. I'm not American, and I'm not a dual citizen, so I can't vote. But I feel like Biden's really capitalizing in that sense off of being Obama's VP, and Bernie Sanders risked his life and was arrested protesting for civil rights in the 60s. So I don't understand how you could vote for Biden over that, personally.
What's interesting is that both of those running, this is not their first campaign. This is Biden's third attempt, and this is Bernie's second.
Yeah.
Is the third time the charm for Biden? Do you think that he can...
He's finally the DNC's fave, I guess.
Well, I think there's a serious consideration has to be made about who his VP pick is, more so
Kamala
than any
Harris.
other.
Ugh.
God, I hope not.
I'll get to that
Ugh.
after,
Okay.
but yeah.
Because he is 77 years old. He has made a handful of public gaffes. And he's just like
That's
a
true.
Even in the
weirdo.
last 4 days.
Yeah, like he's
Vote
just
on Super Thursday.
He's a strange old
Did he
man.
really say that?
Yes.
Oh my God. Okay.
He mistook his wife for his sister on stage. He's done
So I think that's a
weirdo.
good point. We
And-
should care who his VP is, because they might be president if he is.
and not just that he could pass away in office, but that
Do you really think that's a possibility that he would pass away in office?
77 years old.
So it's
I don't-
possible. They're
how-
all old, aren't they?
How old is Bernie?
77?
78.
They're
yeah.
all old.
But look at
men.
Obama. When he waltzed into office first, he was all fresh and sharp.
Yeah,
and
then you
ready
see
to
him on the
go.
way out.
And then on the way out, he
Yeah.
looked like a skeleton.
But we can imagine how stressful it is to be the
So
president
look
of
at
the United
like
States.
Bernie or Biden, which
I mean, look.
But Trump, he's in the 70s.
They're all old, yeah. So I think that's a
He
possibility
looks
for
the
all
same,
of them.
I guess. Or
I mean,
spray
Trump
paint
eats
does that
12
too. But
filet-o-fishes a day. He's high.
taking a look at Justin
It's
Trudeau.
hard to have an issue with
Taking
that.
a look at Justin Trudeau, he hasn't seemed to have aged as bad as Obama has aged while he was in
I
office.
think it's probably, and I love my country, but I think it's probably less stressful to be PM
I
than
would
to
agree.
be president.
Yeah.
And I think also,
Even with the self-inflicted wounds that Justin Trudeau has inflicted on himself, yes, I would agree.
Also, he has his beard now. That probably makes him look younger. There's a little gray in it. He's mature now.
he's
God,
mature.
Canadian politics makes me so fucking depressed.
I'm saying that he's like, it's just a joke. Yeah, like he doesn't look as tired and stressed as Obama did on his way out. And I think it's because it's largely not as stressful. But his beard
Well,
is
there were
just
memes
adding to it.
about if Bernie were to get elected last time, like how he would look going in, and then I think like him leaving was like skeletal, like flesh blowing back.
Ew.
It was like,
Oh, is that like the scene from Indiana Jones where like
Yeah.
decomposes and
yeah.
Well, let's then, who do you guys actually think is gonna clench the nomination? Who do you truly believe is going to be the candidate to
I
face
think
Trump?
it's up in the air right now. I would not say that it's for sure Biden or for sure Bernie. I think it's up in the air. Super Tuesday historically decides the nominee, but that doesn't mean that it has to happen this time. And there's still a lot of delegates up for grabs, and the difference isn't so large that it would be impossible for Bernie to catch up and overtake Biden. So I don't know. I hope it's Bernie, but
Make the case
It could
for
be
Bernie.
Biden.
Why do you want Bernie?
well, I'm Canadian first. But
If you were American, why would you want Bernie?
I mean, largely, I think things like healthcare. I don't think anybody should be too poor to live especially in a developed nation like the United States. And I think that the predatory nature of the healthcare industry is just ridiculous. Like insulin and EpiPens and things like that. I don't think you should ever have to worry about how much it's going to cost to get needed medical care. Also, the student loan debt. there's something to be said for people deciding to take on debt and deciding what to study, but I think that the student loan industry is largely predatory. And I think that American politics has largely been overtaken by oligarchs in the 1%, and it's supposed to represent the people, and I think Bernie does that, and I think that's what they need in the States.
What's your response,
I think
Samuel?
it's 110% Biden is going to get the nomination, just solely because Bernie was an independent, well, I think 10 years ago. Like he's very recently.
He ran as a Democrat in 2016 and then went back to the Senate as an independent.
Yeah.
He used as the party.
Well, and
He's not a Democrat.
And the
Michael Bloomberg wasn't either, but at least Michael Bloomberg, at least
donated
put
to
himself,
Republicans.
but at least he fully immersed himself in the party, for an extent of time. Bernie Sanders basically just uses them to run elections.
I think I would disagree with that.
Why?
Because I don't think Bloomberg has done Bloomberg's donated to Republicans. I think it's ridiculous to say that Bloomberg is more of a Democrat than Bernie
but he's
Sanders.
made it very clear that, yes, he used to be a Republican, but now
now it's convenient to run as a Democrat.
Fair
and he's
enough,
a
but Bernie
billionaire.
Sanders ran on a revolution of taking over the Democratic Party, and then when he lost his nomination, he, had a little. I
think it's pretty reminiscent of Buttigieg's comment comparing Trump's nostalgia for the 50s to Bernie's nostalgia for the revolutionary politics of the 60s. And that was revolutionary politics he's talking about, the civil rights movement. So I think I don't understand this appeal to the status quo that's not working for most Americans. I really don't get it.
It's probably Bernie as a candidate himself. If there was someone that probably, I disagree with virtually everything she stands for, but AOC, I think, there's something.
She would
to
have
be
the exact
said.
same politics as Bernie Sanders. She's endorsed him.
The Democratic Party is going to split in two, and that's just a matter of demographics. Like you discussed, the black vote went necessarily to Biden. The Hispanic vote largely went to Bernie, and that progressive wing, I guess, of the party that has a larger share of Latinos in you could call them corporate Democrats, like Rust Belt Democrats.
Here's my question before you go further.
Okay.
How do you know, and this is a serious question, how do you know where the black vote and the Latino vote goes if each voter is anonymous?
I think
Census data. So what they would do is they would combine the votes with, say, a certain, I think it's a county in the U.S. they call it, not a riding, a county, what the racial demographics of that county are, and then compare that to how they voted with other counties that
majority black counties voted for Biden for the most part.
That's how they do it.
Which is ridiculous.
So now, Zehavi, make the case for why Biden should get the nomination.
Well, I think.
Sorry, what did you say, Sam?
I'm just saying that, the progressive Bernie type Democrat progressive policies, that wing of the Democratic Party is it's just a matter of time. It's going to supersede the other, corporatist, neoliberal sections. It's just a matter of demographics.
Yeah, there's just more people on the progressive
There's more
side.
Latinos.
And I just still don't understand how a regular person thinks that voting for the Democratic establishment is in their best interests. But
Maybe it's because Biden is a familiar face, and they believe that Biden, having already had experience in office, presidential office, I should say, is an alternative, is a better option.
I think that's a bad reason, but
That's
maybe.
not my reason.
No, I know.
just
I'm saying I think people who would vote that way because of that are making a bad decision. I think we should look at policy.
Okay. So then, Zehavi, back to you. Make the case for Biden.
So for a lot of Americans, and I feel like I have to get this out there, I'm not an American citizen, so I'm not voting in this election, but a lot of Americans, whether they're Democrats, independents, and even some Republicans, their biggest issue in this election is to defeat Donald Trump. And a lot of them are putting who they think is the best, who represents them the best, and who their ideas they agree with. They're putting that sort of to a on the side in this specific election, because to them they feel like the goal should be in this race getting rid of Trump. So the issue that they probably have with Bernie is that Bernie, while he is a little bit, he excites the youths, as it seems, maybe not as much this time as last, but he's too far left for people, right? Whether you arguably that's the case for many people, and the Republicans have essentially created a campaign against the radical left-wing Democrats that Bernie Sanders would fit into. And that's why you're seeing Donald Trump basically cheer him on and say that the DNC is rigging it for Biden because they know they want to run against Bernie. They're scared of Biden. Biden is not perfect. Believe me, there are better choices that the Democrats could have chosen. But between Biden and between Bernie, I think what a lot of people saw is that the black community largely supported Biden. That was very evident in South Carolina. And they realized to build the coalition that can grow the party to take, districts and counties that Trump won in 2016 in the Rust Belt. So in places like Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. They need a candidate who will appeal to those working class people, but won't scare off those Obama to Trump voters in 2016. And Bernie does not. For a lot of people, he really turns them off. Like if I was American and the choice was between Bernie and Trump, I probably would not. I probably would write in Pete Buttigieg, but I would not want to pick between the two. It's like the evil that you know with Trump versus the evil that you don't know yet.
Yeah, I
with
don't
Bernie.
think free healthcare is evil.
No,
and I don't understand what's evil. Yeah, that's the thing. It should be about policy.
But that's
it's politics.
the thing with the Bernie supporters is that they focus way too on like, oh, if you don't like Bernie, then you want
No,
people to die. It's
the
like,
Bernie Sanders-
I don't
No.
think that college
No.
debt should be written off. Like
No.
it's about like fiscal policy that who.
Like Martin Luther King said, America's experienced socialism for the 1%, and what was it, rugged individualism for the rest of America. I think Bernie Sanders supporters say things like, "Well, you don't care about people." Like I've said multiple times on this show, like
That's
ridiculous. Screw people who have cancer and can't afford it because Biden is not going to make things better for those people, and it's not about Bernie Sanders. If the tables were turned and Sanders was losing and he dropped out today, I would say that we should support Warren because she's another, as far as I know, Medicare for all candidate. I don't understand healthcare. Yeah, providing healthcare is not evil, and I think if you're supporting a candidate that doesn't support Medicare for all, you are supporting people continuing to die because they can't afford healthcare. It's the truth, or people continuing to be put in massive, ridiculous amounts of debt because they can't afford healthcare. So I guess if that's too far left for people, that really sucks. And the 1% in America should really pat themselves on the back for convincing the regular American that they're on their side.
But are all those
they're
voters
not.
that supported even Trump and Hillary and other candidates in this Democratic primary, are they part of the 1%? I feel like that's
that's the thing. They're not part of the 1%, but they support the candidate
supporters.
that is put forth by the 1%, which doesn't make any sense because that doesn't work in their own interests. In 2016, Bernie didn't get the nomination, so a lot of his
and it took him a very long time to come to that realization.
Of his supporters, I know, voted for Trump, but I'm sure a lot of them voted for Hillary as well. Again, I'm not American. If I were and Biden were to get the nomination, I would vote for him over Donald Trump. But so I don't think it's about Bernie specifically. But again, you're not Hillary Clinton. It does not represent the regular person. Neither does Donald Trump, whose father was rich and gave him $1 million to start his businesses.
So let's then end the show with the most important question, which is, does the nominee affect the Democrats' chances of beating Trump? Now, before anybody answers, we asked that question in our poll on Facebook and on Instagram. Again, does the nominee affect the Democrats' chances of beating Trump? Samuel, what were the results?
So 70% said yes, it does, and 30% said no, it does not.
How many people voted?
So 23 total votes, 16 for yes and 7 for no.
And then on Instagram?
On Instagram, we had 63% said yes, 37% said no, 21 total votes, and 12 for yes, 9 for no.
So most people believe then that the vote, whoever is chosen to be the nominee, affects the chances of beating Trump. What are everyone's thoughts here, Amara?
I think it absolutely does. I think Donald Trump would absolutely mop the floor with Joe Biden in a general election. He's getting pretty confused pretty clearly, so I think that's just pretty easy to point out. I think I'm really interested to see what happens after we have a debate with Bernie and Biden, just them two. I think I'd like to see what happens after that.
They definitely, the candidate does matter because their ability to capture voters in swing states like the Rust Belt, where Trump won by very, very slim margins, like thousands, not tens of thousands, but thousands in some states. And I have a perfect analogy for Bernie. He was born, I had to write this down because it's so good. He was born too late to be a Bolshevik and murder the Tsar in World War I, too early to be president, but born just in the right time to split the Democratic Party in half.
And Zehavi?
Whatever.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
I think, yes, I agree. It does matter who the nominee is. I think, as you know, we've been debating about this in the last few minutes, that if I don't think that Biden or that Trump will mop the floor with Biden, I don't think that he would mop the floor necessarily with Bernie, but I think he would probably mop the floor a little bit more with Bernie because of Bernie's policies. And that's where a lot of people, it does come down to policy, but it also comes down to who can best defeat Trump. And I think a lot of people get that Trump-like vibes from Bernie Sanders, not necessarily on policy, but on personality. And
that is an extreme cop-out. Bernie Sanders would never say he would grab a woman by the
but I said not on policy, but like
and not on personality either. Bernie Sanders is nothing like Donald Trump. The Democratic establishment is afraid of Bernie Sanders and is very interested in comparing him to Donald Trump in order to scare people who are maybe not as politically interested off. I think that's an absolute cop-out. Bernie Sanders is nothing like Donald Trump.
But then why did a lot of Bernie Sanders go to Trump after he lost the
Because
primary?
They really didn't like Clinton.
Yeah, because they were individuals who are bitter. Just like Warren supporters who were saying that they would support Biden over Bernie, even though Bernie's ideologically closer to their candidate. Individual people are bitter. You can't blame Bernie for, bitter idiots who, if you've supported Bernie, it doesn't make sense to vote for Trump in the election, right? So
well, it's
they're
the
bitter.
populism aspect of it.
Yes,
probably.
true.
Well, it's quite interesting
But
that,
they're bitter, is
that
what I would say.
everyone here, no matter what they think, believes that that Trump is defeatable based on the candidate. Again, Amara, you believe that if Bernie's the candidate, then you can beat Trump. What are you going to say?
No, Biden's going to lose 100 million.
And you don't think that
percent.
there's a chance that Bernie gets the nomination?
You just said that it matters who the candidate is.
But he thinks
Yeah,
it'll
Trump.
be Biden for sure. That's
Yeah,
why
it'll
he's
be
saying
Biden.
that.
But the question is whether whoever it is, does it matter? Even let's say Bernie got it. Do you think that Bernie can beat Trump?
No.
If Biden got it, you think Biden can beat Trump?
No.
So then your answer is no.
It doesn't matter.
I also wouldn't say
Wait,
that if Biden gets it, he's necessarily going to beat Trump.
What I said.
But I think he has a better chance at beating Trump than someone
I don't
someone
think
like
so.
Bernie.
And I think an appeal to the status quo, which is like the Pete Buttigieg quote I mentioned earlier, which is what I feel that is pretty cowardly, honestly.
What's the quote again?
So he doesn't want to have to choose between Donald Trump's nostalgia for the 50s and Bernie Sanders' nostalgia for the revolutionary politics of the 60s or the civil rights movement. I think that it's a cop-out. I think that it's cowardly. And I think that normal people in North America, but America more than Canada, are having a really hard time of just surviving. And the wealth inequality in the United States is getting to a point where it's stifling. And I think something needs to change. And I think being too afraid to embrace change and instead handing the country to Donald Trump for another 4 years because you're afraid of Bernie or you're part of the Democratic establishment that I would say has a vested interest in keeping things the way they are economically, is cowardly, and I don't think it makes any sense.
Yeah, the real interesting and I think deciding election will be 4 years from now. Trump has largely extended the status quo of the Bush years, so whether his wing of the Republican Party can find a new candidate to rally behind, or if it's just going to be, Reaganite bullshit. Right?
Yeah, I'd be interested to see
Maybe.
if Trump did win again, who
would
was that
succeed him?
2024?
I don't
would
think-
be.
Nikki Haley.
Fuck Nikki Haley.
God.
What do you have against her?
She's a neoliberal, UN type. Like, no, she's not a nationalist. She's not gonna. She wouldn't get Trump votes. That's for sure.
I think, yeah. And I think also, we've mentioned this before, and I think this is pretty obvious to everyone. Trump won because while he didn't win the
Drained the
popular
swamp.
vote, yes, he wasn't a
Which
politician.
He didn't, but
He didn't either. He's part of the swamp. It's also ridiculous to want somebody who's doesn't have any experience in a job do that job and the highest level of that job. But people are tired of politicians. They're tired of what they feel is the 1% in the establishment. Personally, I believe that Donald Trump is the physical embodiment of the establishment. But I think people are tired of that. Another reason that I think Bernie would do better than Biden is I think Bernie is more charismatic than Biden. I think Biden's kind of off-putting as a
Bernie
person.
just yells. Look, I'm Jewish,
you should
and I get such vibes watching him.
I feel like you should
it's like
listen
watching my
to what
dad
he's
and
yelling
my
about.
uncle, or my dad and his friend talk politics at the Passover Seder table. That's how
that's what it felt like with Biden.
it's scary
and
how
Bloomberg.
I internalize that.
I just feel like we should listen to what the policies are rather than
What are they
just
again?
saying ridiculous stuff.
Besides
Medicare for
Medicare
all,
for
forgiving
all.
student loan debt, forgiving
But how would that
healthcare
be
debt.
handled? Where would that money come from? How do you forgive it?
Taxing.
Bernie has not said how he's going to pay for
he
it.
has.
Elizabeth,
Yeah,
has
he
a
has
plan.
said I
Well,
was going
she
to
had
pay
a
for
plan.
it, taxing the 1%. I believe there was a proposed tax on,
Speculative Wall Street betting.
yes, that. is what I'm talking about. And the progressive wealth tax, which I think also people are using to scare people. But Bernie Sanders is not going to tax somebody who makes like $80,000 a year at 52%. That's a lie.
I'm just gonna say it's gonna be Biden's gonna be the nominee. Like everything indicates that that's going to be the case, and I think he's going to pick Kamala Harris as his vice presidential,
and
as his running mate.
Will seal the deal,
and I'll
and
tell
we will
you
have
why
another
really
4 years of
quickly,
Donald Trump.
because I know we're running out of time. That's going to be where it's important, where he has all these flaws, being old, dementia, all that sort of stuff.
Malarkey
He'll
perfect.
need someone who's going to be his successor,
Yes.
but also where he lacks appeal. She is more progressive than he is, arguably. She is a woman of color. He needs a woman, and I even would argue he needs a person of color on his ticket. And she was a prosecutor. She's a senator, so it's not like she's insignificant.
Similar-
She's largely unpopular. Why did she drop out almost after
Immediately?
the second debate? Yeah.
Similar to Obama.
Well,
She appealed to the
One at a time.
Kamala. She appealed to the woke Twitter crowd. That's
Yeah,
why.
so not the genuine woke Twitter crowd, the ridiculous woke Twitter crowd that thinks that somebody's identity somehow dictates their politics. Because similar to Obama, who was the first black president, of course, big deal, but policy wasn't that different, did as many bad things as other American presidents have done. Kamala Harris was a prosecutor and put multiple people in prison
She
for
was an independent
marijuana
member of the law.
related offenses. That's pretty abhorrent. And then to market yourself as somehow a voice for the black community while simultaneously doing something like that is disgusting. And if Joe Biden wins, it would be pretty funny to me if he chose Kamala Harris, because I think that seals the deal and they won't win.
I think if you're patient enough, you'll find that in 4-8 years, you'll get a candidate that is more, maybe not Bernie because he's old, but
AOC.
But I think
Yikes.
she's actually too young to be president.
Yeah,
but
not next time, but
Couple cycles.
that,
she'll run.
that progressive wing of the Democratic Party is definitely ascendant, and you'll see them.
And yeah, I just want to, again, healthcare isn't a far left radical thing to provide. We have universal healthcare in Canada. We don't have free college or student loan debt forgiveness, but I also don't pay $60,000 a year to go here.
How does Obamacare compare to Bernie Sanders' plan? Because
Bernie care.
I believe that it's Bernie Sanders' plan is really similar to what we have here, and Obamacare still had a middleman. So I think that's the main difference.
And you think the U.S. can handle the same system that we have here?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I don't know.
Why?
The amount of people that, first of all, Canadians are largely, whether they like it or not, probably wouldn't, are used to being taxed very high. And the amount of people that live in the United States far outnumbers the amount of people that live here that it's feasible. And even here, that's why I think something like letting people choose to keep their private insurance, or having a mechanism where you incrementally work towards Medicare for all, where it's because people have I'm entitled to my entitlements. That's once
You're
you have
entitled
something,
to health care in
but
a
yeah,
developed
but
nation.
once you rip away their private health care insurance that a lot of people have in the States that people like, because there's an argument to be made that the service is better from a private insurance perspective than from a public.
I agree with the idea that personal, individual people don't like the idea of their private insurance
It
going
should
away.
be incremental.
We've seen that, but again, I think that there are people who are in mountains of debt that they'll never get out of because they had a heart attack, or because they had a lot of people do home births in the States because of how expensive it is. And had to be rushed to the hospital for some sort of complication. I think healthcare is a human right, and if you live in a wealthy, developed nation, there's absolutely no reason you should be too poor to survive. It's absolutely disgusting and predatory. Like the morality episode, do you remember that dilemma we talked about with the man stealing the medication for his wife?
Yep.
And we all said that it wasn't immoral because she was going to die. It's absolutely immoral the way that how expensive healthcare is, because if you or your child or your family member is going to die, you're going to pay whatever it costs. You're going to take on whatever debt it is because it's your life. And I think it's absolutely disgusting the way that they're treated. Healthcare stocks or insurance stocks went up when Biden won Super Tuesday, and I think that's very telling. And
Do you
that's all we need
think
to look
part
at.
of the problem in the States is that medication costs so much, and it's the pharmaceutical companies that are the problem?
Because hospital stays cost a lot too. Giving birth costs a lot. I've read stories.
But I'm saying
$30,000,
prescription
$40,000
medication is more expensive in the States.
yeah, I
than
think
it is
that's
here.
all the problem.
Okay.
All of it. But I think the bigger problem is how much things cost. We've all, I assume, heard accounts of people who get very sick, of course, somebody gets cancer or somebody's kid gets cancer and they get fired from their job because their job doesn't want to pay for the healthcare and now they're screwed. But there's people who break their arm or twist their ankle or have smaller issues that they don't go to the doctor for because they can't afford it. And that can grow into something worse. You know, something like a UTI could grow into a kidney infection that could kill you if you don't get it treated fast enough. And to have to think about money just for some antibiotics, I think is disgusting.
$30,000 is the cost of pregnancy and then before and after care.
Wow.
Absolutely ridiculous.
We have a comment coming in from Hendrik. He says, there is only one developed nation that somehow sees healthcare as impossible, and I'm wondering how a Canadian that's been to a hospital advocates for bankrupting people for a snake bite.
Absolutely.
I don't.
150%.
I think the U.S. needs to work towards a system where people who aren't covered should be, and I think
as long as you're advocating against Medicare for all, you're advocating for people dying and going bankrupt because they can't afford medication.
That's an extreme cop-out.
It's not. It's the truth.
I just
why
said I think
cop-out?
that there should be coverage for people who don't have coverage.
Yeah, right now, not progressively. Like tomorrow, there should be.
No, but then I think with the existence of private insurance, there should be a way to incrementally and gradually work towards a system where there is an equal playing field for all. But I think
that's not going to happen as long as private insurance exists.
Yeah, private insurance, it would be unprofitable to them to charge low insurance fees, like low premiums, because people wouldn't be able to afford it. It wouldn't make sense in their mathematical ratio to provide the services at such a low amount, which is where the government,
and there's a lot of people who, no one said this, I'm not accusing anyone of saying this, but there's a lot of people who talk about how, in Canada we have long wait times for surgeries. There's the hallway healthcare in hospitals, people being in hallways. That's obviously horrible. Nobody wants that to happen, but I think that I would much rather deal with that than deal with having to think about paying for not dying.
I think it's a much easier solution to try to fix Canada's broken system than try to fix America's broken
100%.
system.
And
I think healthcare is a human right.
I do too.
I think we can all agree on that part. Though. It's just a matter of how to protect it. I think.
I don't think we all agree because I think.
Healthcare is a human right. That's what we agree on.
I think
it's just a matter of how do we deal with
for a system in which people can't afford healthcare, then you don't believe healthcare is a human right because you believe people who don't afford it shouldn't have it.
I agree with Amara. I believe in single-payer, government-provided healthcare.
Interesting.
I do too. I just think from a political perspective, and I'm not saying this as being right necessarily. I'm just saying there would be such an incredible pushback for people who feel quote unquote entitled to their entitlements. Example being private insurance that their work benefits for them or provides for them, and if you rip it away from them, they're going. It's like you see here when certain things are taken away by a government decision for efficiencies that people they lose their shit and they feel the need to
insane
to go crazy.
We're wrestling with people to give them a better choice than what they have. We're fighting with people to say this is overall. I've seen charts. I don't have the exact numbers. Obviously, taxes will go up if Bernie Sanders gets elected in order to pay for healthcare. But when you compare that to how much people pay for insurance, it's less. We're literally arguing with people to give them cheaper and better access to healthcare. I think that's ridiculous. Again, healthcare is a human right. Nobody should be too poor to survive. I don't understand how this is even an argument. Not you specifically. I'm talking about people
as long as you make that clear. Okay.
Talking about the people that are campaigning and voting against it and the people that are married to this idea of their private insurance. And people who would go from Warren to Biden or anybody who would vote for Biden, if you're not part of the 1%, the establishment on either side, the Republican establishment or the Democratic establishment, they're not working for you. And throwing your support behind them is ridiculous.
And the last thing I want to mention is, you just mentioned Warren. We have a comment from Matthew Arus. Do y'all think the only chance of Warren endorsing Bernie is if he offers her VP at this point?
Probably.
If that's true, Warren, maybe that might be true. I don't know, Warren. That's gross. It shouldn't be a give and take. I think separately from this, the idea of her as his VP, something to think about. That's possible. But I think if she's I'm only going to support you, I'm only going to endorse you if you give me VP, it's ridiculous. And I think that if she does something like that, or if she doesn't endorse him, she needs to stop calling herself a progressive and fess up to the fact that she wanted to be president and didn't want to make the world or America better for American
Right.
people.
And that's where we're going to end it off today. We went a little over because we had such a great discussion. That was our show for this week. Thank you to everyone that tuned in and that messaged us live. Thank you, Zehavi, for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
We really appreciate it. And something very interesting for our audience is after the show, we're actually going to put up a poll now that we only have 2 main contenders in the race. Who do you believe is going to be the nominee, Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden? So make sure to vote on that after the show. A brand new episode of the Raben Report will be coming to you next week, same day, same time, same people. Have a great day, everyone.